My name is Joseph B. Harris. I'm back once again to talk about drug addiction. But first, I want to introduce my books again. I'm an author of 3 books. My first book, Escape from Critical Confusion, got 5 stars on Amazon. That's the highest you can get. It's an autobiographical textbook. I talk about growing up in New York City, um, how a child gets into juvenile delinquency and commits crimes again and again, even after being caught. The thinking that goes along with that. I like to focus on the mind. I also talk about how a person gets involved with drugs and the reality of that whole life from a reality perspective. I had a 12 and a half year intravenous heroin alcohol addiction from age 16 to 28. I've been sober for 46 years. I talk about how that whole process takes place in the many different changes that people have to go through as a drug addicted person, coming from dreaming about doing certain things with your life and all of those things taken away. Then I talk about how to come out of it. My second book, Black America Breaking the Code, I talk about many different things related to Black Americans, our rights as citizens, our contributions to the country, the arts, the sciences, music, the wars, World War One, Korean conflict, World War II, Vietnam, so many different contributions that we've done for the sciences and the arts. I also have a chapter on women and a chapter on men and ways that we can improve our lives. My latest book, Drug Addiction and the Most Powerful Enemy Against It, A Recovering Sober Mind, a masterpiece of a book that I wrote. I talk about how drug addiction starts, which can be used for prevention. I talk about the stages of progression towards chemical dependency, that whole stage, which we're going to talk about today, how it starts. The stages of progression towards chemical dependency. I talk about what it's like in detox and rehab. For the last 30 years, I would work as a counselor and a drug rehab and detoxification unit in Good Samaritan Hospital, Rockland County for 30 years. I just retired from that job in October of 2018. I talk about what it's like to be in detox, what medications are used, the thinking processes when a person is in detox, thinking about, should I use again, should I not use again, can I go through this? All of those things, the way that the person can zero in on the proper way to think. I talk about rehab, all the things that go on in rehab and how it can help someone overcome drug addiction. And then I talk about how the person in general, what they need to do to beat this with the help of counselors and social workers and psychiatrists and self-help groups. So it's a very interesting book. And I encourage, the last time I spoke, I encourage that you purchase the book and follow me as I go along with different things related to the book. So today we're going to talk about stages of progression towards chemical dependency. The first thing I want to mention is no one plans on becoming addicted to drugs. Nobody says, well, I'm going to use drugs and become addicted. The plan is to just have fun. And that's the recreational stage when you first start, is you're just having fun, not realizing how poisonous and deadly these chemicals are. Alcohol, heroin, marijuana, cigarettes all create tremendous damage to the mind and body, and it influences your life in such a way, takes control over the mind and has you thinking in a way that it commands you to think. Your children, job, all of those things start to look different to you when you become addicted to drugs. So let's talk about the first stage, the recreational stage. Now, how people start using drugs is someone that they love or trust is going to turn. That's how it usually starts. A friend of mine, a relative, a brother, sister, mother, father, turns me on. So we hear all of these stories about drugs, what they do to people, how they destroy lives. People go to jail, they become bums. We know this. But if someone that I love or trust can convince me, just try it. Try this marijuana. Here I am, 12, 14 years old, even younger than that nowadays. Try it. Oh, I heard all about it. No, I'm telling you, look at me, I'm fine. If we try it and like it, that's where the problem comes. It doesn't come immediately. Some people get high for the first time, especially with heroin, and it kills them. I've known people that died for the first time they put the needle in their arm. So, but in most cases, it doesn't kill you immediately. If you try it, nothing bad happens. I don't go to jail. My parents aren't angry with me, or my wife or my husband are angry with me. Everything is fine. And usually when a person tries drugs, they don't tell anybody. What I tell young people, if someone offers you a drug, the first thing you shouldn't take it. That's number one. But you need to tell your parents, hey, this guy offered me drugs. What do you think about that? Should I take this drug? Tell somebody about what these people are trying to do with you. Because young people see things in different ways than people who have experience. And when we tell you don't do something, it's because we love you or we care about you. It's not that we're trying to take some fun out of your life. So try to keep that in mind. So the first stage towards chemical dependency is the recreational stage. Usually in the recreational stage, a person would use every now and then. Like if I got high today, maybe with a couple of friends for the first time, nothing happens in school, I don't get any bad grades, parents don't know about it, I with me, everything is fine. But I'm not getting high every day. So there's no problem. No, I don't see any problem at all. And that's one of the tricks about drug addiction. You do not see any problem. Everything is fine, healthy, and you don't see one because there is none. So a recreational user is going to use maybe every 2-3 months. And every time they use, they're using in different places there's no pattern there to their usage. They don't need drugs to go play basketball or swim or hang out with their friends. Not a problem. They're not addicted. So in that first stage, once again, if you like it, keep that in mind. That's why a person should never try drugs. I was just talking to a young lady not too long ago. She's a high school student. No, don't ever let anybody talk you into trying a drug. Cigarettes, marijuana, any of them, they're all deadly, dangerous, poisonous drugs. Let me give you the dictionary's version of poison real quick. A substance causing illness or death when eaten, drank, or absorbed, even in relatively small quantities. Anything harmful or destructive to happiness or welfare, such as an ideal emotion. Do you know how many kids' dreams were destroyed because of drugs? Thinking about, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a scientist, and start using drugs at a young age, 14, 15 years old, and the brain has been thwarted and twisted and changed so that those dreams are gone, no longer in the mind. To influence wrongfully or to corrupt. Now, the drugs are going to influence your mind. As the addiction progresses, it's going to influence your mind. But the main thing I wanted to give you an idea of what poison means. Now, as a person continues to use recreationally, the next stage is the purposeful stage. Because now I'm using more than I normally use. Instead of using once every 2-3 months, I like the way it feels. So now I'm using maybe every 2 weeks. And then one day I decide, hey, I just feel like I want to get high. I'm going to the movies. So, hey, let me smoke a joint. Let me get a beer. If there's no purpose, I'm not going to get high. Still no problems. Just going to school or going to work. Everything is beautiful. No problems. The drugs hasn't taken over my mind yet. During these times, when the drugs haven't taken over the mind and body, it keeps telling that individual, it's okay. I can handle this. Nothing is wrong. And that's how that stages of progression continue to work on you. As I continue to use, over time, I'll wake up one morning, no problem, no purpose, no reason for me to get high. I just feel like I want to get high. That's the non-purposeful stage. Now, mind you, each time you use, the desire to use is going to get stronger, and the amount that you need to get that same effect is going to get stronger. That's what we call tolerance increase. So as I continue to use, thinking everything is all right, I can handle this, and I get into that non-purposeful stage where I just feel like I want to get high, I just start to crave. This is where I believe drug addiction starts. It's not full blown, because remember, you progress towards that full blown stage. But this is where I believe that the addiction starts. I just feel like I want to get high. So what do? I go get the drug, no matter where it is. I make it by myself. I might get somebody to get it for me. If it's an illegal drug and I'm not really full blown yet, so I don't trust the people in the street, and I go get high. Like the way it feels, nothing is wrong, and I start using, maybe instead of every 2 weeks, I start binging. Every weekend when I get paid, I get high. Or every weekend when there's no school on the weekend, I decide to get high. Starting off with, a little bit amount, maybe $3 worth, $5 worth in the beginning. Now I'm going to parties. And what's going to happen in this stage, I'm going to start changing my friends. People that don't get high, we can't hang out. We used to go to the movie together. We used to play basketball together. We used to swim together. We used to be in different clubs, baseball teams. I'm not doing that anymore on the weekends. Now I'm getting high Friday and Saturday. Go to church on Sunday. Not realizing that things are building up inside, because drug addiction has what's called an accumulative effect, where it builds a stronghold inside of you before you even realize you got a problem. So as we go along and thinking everything is fine, at the same time, the drug is building that stronghold inside and taking control over my thinking. I'm starting, my morals and values begin to change slowly. And I don't realize that I'm going to need more of the drug to get the same effect. So instead of me spending $5 like I did when I first started using, now I'm spending $20. Not even realizing, because money now, hey, if I'm working or if I can still get money from my parents, it's not a problem for me. Binging is 3 to 7 days. So I start binging Friday and Saturday, go to church on Sunday. Then I start binging Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And each time I use, as these weeks progress, I'm using more of the drug. I'm hanging out with more people who use instead of more people who don't use. During these periods, I may start lying, which is one of the symptoms of addiction. Start lying to my parents or lying to my wife, because nobody wants, in that stage, you don't want people to know that you're engaging in this behavior. Right there should tell you that there's something wrong, that you don't want to tell people that you love what you're doing. So as I continue with that binging, now I'm getting high Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm spending more money. And if it's an illegal drug like heroin or coke or crack, I'm going to start borrowing money. I'm going to start lying to people that I love about what I'm going to do with the money, and not realizing at the same time that I'm becoming a slave to drugs. And the drug dealers love it, because now they got another victim that they can get all this money. So as I continue to use, it's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Calling sick on Monday. My values and morals are starting to change, because now that job that was so important to me is no longer that important. I can call in sick. My boss don't like it. It's too bad, because now the drugs are starting to take over my mind. As I continue to use, I'm getting high Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now I am full-blown addicted. Once I become full-blown addicted, the brain has changed. So now that my brain has changed, it is conditioned. The brain has been trained to react to the commands of drugs. The first law of nature is self-preservation. When a person becomes full-blown addicted to drugs, to protect yourself is out the window. I had a young woman when I was working at Good Sam up in Rockland County who was Narcan 23 times. She overdosed on heroin 23 times. She's now dead. Can you imagine taking it, for a sober person, taking a chance on your life 23 times? And the doctors and the nurses and the family, please stop, you're going to die. When that brain is conditioned, very hard to see the reality of your condition. So your morals start to change. You start doing things that you would never do. You start to accepting situations and conditions that you would never accept. I had a former assistant district attorney of Brooklyn come to me as a patient at Good Samaritan Hospital. He was a lawyer. He was very well known, became full-blown addicted to cocaine. When I got him, it was 15 years after he started with cocaine. When I got him, he came in homeless, looked like a bum. So the drugs had changed his brain so much that he really didn't even know who he was. He just knew, like some people call drug addict, he just knew he was a drug addict, which is a term that I don't like, because you're a human being no matter where you are. You're a human being before you get on drugs, you're a human being while you're on drugs, and you're a human being when you come off drugs. So we want to keep that in mind, because the people who have an addiction history, you need to know that you can beat this fella. We're going to talk about that. But today we're talking about those stages of progression. Recreational, you have that recreational stage when you first start using. Purposeful, where there's a purpose for you to use. Non-purposeful, you just wake up one day and start thinking about you. Binging, and then chemical dependency. And once you become chemically dependent, you can't go back down to recreational uses. And this is a problem for so many drug addicted people, is that once they become full blown, somewhere in their mind, they think, hey man, I know I can just get high one time. You can't do it. It all started with a little bit. Try to keep that in mind. Those who are watching this video and you have been full-blown addicted, you can't go from the full-blown addiction and start down here using again recreation. It's not going to happen. However, you can come from a full-blown addicted person, because you're a human being, and go back to where you never used before and stay there for 50 years, just like I did, 46 years so far. So we want to know, once you become full-blown addicted, there's no return back down to that low level. All you're going to do is poison yourself more and more and more, full-blown addicted again, and life is just like it was in hell before. You cannot change that. That's a fact. Let's talk about the meaning of addiction. The dictionary says the meaning of addiction is to devote or surrender oneself to something habitually or obsessively, to become physiologically and psychologically dependent upon a drug. Now, here you are, a human being, before you ever start using, dedicated to school, want to be to represent your family to the best of your ability as a young person, teenager, preteen, if you're an adult, good job. You want to just do everything you can to make your life better and be proud of yourself. When you become full-blown addicted to drugs, you devote your life to drugs, and it's not voluntary. Remember, you didn't plan on becoming addicted. So your condition is a mistake. This is an involuntary condition. So what am I going to do about it? That's the question for the addicted person. What am I going to do about this mistake? So when I become addicted, I'm devoting my life. I steal from my parents, commit crimes, take a chance on my life. I'm so devoted because the brain has been conditioned. Part of condition means to change the nature of a person. So that person I was before, a person has been created. Part of creation means bringing into existence. So there's another person here. I've had many sessions with family members. We used to do family counseling at Good Samaritan Hospital, another place that I've worked. And the woman would say, I don't know who that's not my husband. I don't know who that is. Another person was asked, that's not my child. I don't know who that person is. Because the drugs change the brain so drastically with the training. Part of training needs to guide the growth and mental development of a person. So slowly that brain has been changed, and the influence that takes place by the drug. Remind you, part of influence means to command obedience, to command belief, to command acceptance. So as my brain is being trained slowly from that recreational stage, my brain starts to react to the commands of the addiction because it's being trained. I don't even realize it's being trained. When I become full blown and my addiction gives me a command, I go do it. Your mother has that money for the mortgage. You know where it is. sneaking in, take that money. She may lose the house, but I got to get this money for my heroin. I got to get this money for my fentanyl. I got this money. I know I shouldn't take this money, but I have to do it because my brain is telling me, my addiction is telling me, giving me that command. This is part of the reasons why people say, addicts are crazy. That's what they say. They say they're crazy. It's a temporary condition. It's not permanent. You can make it permanent, but humans have the ability to overcome so many uncomfortable, powerful things. The human mind is so powerful, it's unbelievable when you exercise it, but you got to believe it. So part of addiction, to devote or surrender oneself to something habitually, obsessively, to become physiologically and psychologically dependent upon a drug. Now let's take a look at the word dependency. Something that is dependent on something else. So when I'm addicted to alcohol, heroin, benzos, whatever, and I wake up in the morning, I got to have that drink. I got to have that shot of dope. I've had, patients say to me that when he woke up, an alcoholic, when he woke up in the morning, he had to have that drink before he eats, before he brushes his teeth. Nothing comes before that drink, So he'll take. He said he has to have 2 pints. The first pint he gets down, he throws it up, and the second pint he's able to hold down, and then maybe he can brush his teeth. With the heroin addicted person, opioid and heroin addicted person, say most heroin addicted people or opioid addicted people give all their money to the drug dealers, so they have no place to live. In most cases, when you're full blown, you gotta live with your mother, your father, friend, somebody, homeless, whatever. Say a person is living with their mother's house, 40 years old, living in his mother's house, parents' house, and he's on heroin. And he wakes up in the morning. You're not going to get up in the morning. You're going to not get up to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if that. You're going to wake up and you smell your favorite meal, chicken and dumplings, and it makes you throw up. You cannot eat until you get that opioid or opiate heroin into your body. You can't do it. So now I got to go downstairs, upstairs, wherever it is, if I don't have any money, and beg my parent for $10 or $15 so I can go get some drugs. When I get the drugs, sneak back in the house like a rat, go into the basement, inject myself with the heroin. Now I can eat. Come back upstairs. Hey, Mom, where's those chicken and dumplings? High as a kite. I mean, the drug addiction is actually a form of slavery. So anytime a person is not in control of him or herself, that person is a slave. So we're paying money as a drug addicted person for slavery. We are paying money to destroy ourselves. There's so many different illnesses that come from drug addiction. Damage to the heart, damage to the brain, damage to the kidneys, damage to the lungs, damage to the stomach, damage to the pancreas, damage to the spine, just on and on and on. All kinds of endocarditis, pneumonia, all kinds of different illnesses that we're paying money for. We're paying money to put our brain in the situation or condition where we're willing to commit felony crimes just to get this poison into our body. I want to think about that. So you young people out there, in particular, you need to know, anytime somebody offers me a drug, I need to stay away from it. Because if I don't, it's going to train my brain and condition my brain to behave my behavior, even though I'm a human being, my behavior will become like that of an animal because I'm not using intelligence. I'm functioning on feeling and instinct. Another part of dependency is determined or conditioned by another. Drugs are going to determine if you go to jail, if you get sick, if you lose that beautiful wife or handsome husband, lose those kids, if your parents kick you out. All of this is going to be determined by drugs. Because when you become addicted to drugs, you have no power over yourself to a certain extent, because we're human beings. So we have a certain amount of power. And an indication of that, working in the hospital, in the detox and rehab, and other places as well. I worked in outpatient, long term. In the hospital, I've had couple of times, a heroin addicted person come into the hospital with 30 bags of heroin, needles. Joe, man, I don't care what you do with it. You can throw it down the toilet. I can't take this anymore. That happens during a moment of sanity. So the addicted person can have a moment of sanity, even though he's all jumbled, his brain is all jumbled up and thwarted, he can still have a moment of sanity. That's how you go into detox. That's how you go into rehab. That's how, you find what some people kick on their own, which is very difficult. Alcohol, benzos, do not try it. You can die. But I encourage anybody that has an addiction problem, go to the hospital. If you have an addiction problem, go to the emergency room now. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Well, I'm going to do it. No. You may go out there and, take that last shot, or drinking and fall down and bust your head. You can die that way. Another part of dependency is, subject to another's jurisdiction. So when I'm on drugs, I'm under the jurisdiction of alcohol. Alcohol is a liquid drug. I'm under the jurisdiction of heroin. I'm under the jurisdiction of benzos, marijuana. So I'm not in control of somebody else has something, not the person, but something has authority over me. I can't function like I want to function. I believe that there's no drug addicted person, maybe one or two, maybe, that really want to be in that lifestyle. We say, oh, they love it. Oh no, drug addiction is torture. As we go on, maybe in my next lecture, I will talk about persecution and oppression. And you can, if you look in the dictionary at persecution and oppression, it fits the drug addicted person to the letter. Drug addicted people are supposed to be pleasure seekers. What happens when I'm so caught up and willing to be tortured with homelessness and loss of job and loss of family, in and out of jail? That's torture. Being a slave to drugs, getting sick, going into withdrawal. That's not pleasure. If you look in the dictionary at the word pleasure, part of pleasure means satisfaction. If a person is able to escape drug addiction, go into detox, which they can, go into rehab, and they decide to use again, the end result of that usage will never be pleasure, will never be satisfaction. It will always be suffering. Guaranteed. So it's not a maybe. Guaranteed suffering every time you use. That's how deadly and damaging and controlling these poisons are. Another part of addiction is the obsession. A persistent, disturbing preoccupation with an often unreasonable idea or feeling. And there's two words I want to look at here. One is unreasonable. So disturbing and unreasonable. So when I'm thinking about using, and I put my concentration on using, that is an unreasonable thought to go back to hell. And it's disturbing because anybody who's ever had an addiction problem knows you do not want to relapse. You do not want to go back down, and that's why you came off the drug. Also part of obsession means compelling motivation. So here you are with overwhelming pressure, and we're going to talk about that in another lecture, how in order for a person to get caught up in the obsession, you have to allow yourself to get caught up in the obsession. It just doesn't come and just grab you immediately. You have to allow yourself to get caught up in the obsession. But once again, we're going to talk about that later. But this is the stages of progression: recreational, purposeful, non-purposeful, binging, and chemical dependency. And we need to know, no one if you haven't started or experimenting with drugs, do not do it. It's going to take you to a level that you will regret tremendously. So remember my 3 books. I'll put them up again. Drug Addiction, the Most Powerful Enemy Against It, A Recovering Sober Mind. Black America, Breaking the Code, and Escape from Critical Confusion. All 3 books can be purchased on my website, jharris.westwoodbooks with an S, publishing.com. jharris.westwoodbookspublishing.com. It can also be purchased on Amazon.com and also on Barnes. You can get it from Barnes and Noble. All right. So I will be back again, and I want the next time I come back, we're going to start talking about different ways to beat addiction. That's what we want to do. Our country's being destroyed by drugs, fentanyl, heroin, alcohol, marijuana, benzodiazepines. We're going to talk about it. So I shall see you shortly. God bless.